Good evening and welcome to the Claw Studio here at the Royal Opera House and to this Insights event supported by Rolex. I'm Flora Willson and this evening we're going to pull back the curtain on Puccini's irresistibly romantic opera La Bohème, ahead of its return to the main stage here at the Royal Opera House on the 14th of October. Richard Jones's glittering production was first seen here in 2017, and it plunges us straight into the pleasures, the perils, and the heartbreak of the opera's 19th century Paris. That setting was always as much nostalgic fantasy as it was urban reality. Puccini himself used to like to say that he'd lived La Bohème as a student in Milan when he had absolutely no money and lived off thin soup and chunks of cheese. The Bohemians at the centre of this opera, though, are four friends struggling to make ends meet, and the women that two of them fall for. There's laughter, there's tears, and there is, of course, irresistibly, unforgettably beautiful music. Well, we'll be hearing some of that score later tonight, performed for us by tenor David Junghoon Kim and pianist Andrey Callegaro. I'll also be chatting to conductor John Edusei about what makes the score tick, what makes it so magical. And we'll also be welcoming choreographer and director Danielle Urbas to tell us what it's like to revive this opera. First, though, let's welcome some of the stars of the show. Please join me in welcoming Eileen Perez, Juan Flores, and André Zhilikhovsky. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been rehearsing all day. I wonder, as a slightly curveball way to start, can you introduce yourselves as your characters in this piece? Eileen, can we start with you?
They call me Mimi. But my real name is Lucia. And I don't know why they call me Mimi.
Very nice. A nice trick to simply quote what she says.
Well, I think she's one of the most understated, passionate personalities that you'll see. And she's the one that goes almost unnoticed. And then, of course, Puccini just writes and makes her the real poetry of the whole night. I think. But I don't know that personally, but it sure feels like it.
Okay, so for Mimi, it's Mimi's show. Juan Diego,
yeah.
How about you?
Of course, it's all Mimi show. I love Mimi. I think he's a very lovable character. And when she comes and they meet, this is probably the most wonderful moment. The spark, the tenderness, and the music starts changing in that moment, because everything is like, in the beginning, it's like everybody's saying something, and suddenly this moment, and then beautiful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's amazing to think, Puccini didn't plan to have that scene in there at all at first. It was only really late in composition where they were like, you know what we need here is a duet between the lovers. It's amazing to think that this opera could have not had that duet in at all. André, what about you? Tell us about your character.
I'm Marcello. Hello. I'm a friend of Rodolfo. And this opera is about Mimi and Rodolfo. It's not about Marcello.
Oh, come now.
But I'm a good friend of this guy. And
also, out of the production.
Yeah.
What buddies?
Yeah. And we have a beautiful duet in the Act 4. Yeah. And who's Marcello? It's a young guy, full of life. like us, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're still friends, because you're 10 days from opening night. Yeah. I guess it's useful to be friends at this point in rehearsals. Can I ask how rehearsals are going? Go on, give us some goss.
It's all about the chemistry and timing. I think it's one of actually the most challenging scores to put together, because Puccini, the way he writes, it's syncopated rhythms and it's very theatrical. It's already all in the music, and it's up to us not to miss those cues. But you can't overdo a cue because it looks too put on, and you can't miss it because then you miss it. And I think I've dropped a key. I've managed to kick the key. And I said, goal, para Perez. And I mean, how you light the candle, the timing when the music restarts. There's a lot going on, and it
I
all
guess
has to look seamless. And Marcello, you're such an anchor also in this trio, but also with Musetta. She and Mimi are alike, and also the vibrant inner world that Mimi has. You actually get to see Musetta live, and in Act 2, it's just the height of all of life and all of culture and all of the holiday spirit, really.
Is it fair to say that the fact that Musetta is a mezzo is kind of crucial here?
Well, I think it's good to know that it can be played by a mezzo, but usually sopranos sing it.
Okay.
Yeah, but and in this case we have Danielle Denise, you know, Danny, who is fire incarnate, and it's just a scene-stealing show, and it's I probably say the least lines in that show, and I love it. It's full of you know, the stage is full of all the children and chorus and actors, and I would say theater full on. You know.
Yeah.
There could be a ballet. If there was a little more time, he might have put a ballet in.
I mean, it has got all that kind of Parisian life about it, hasn't it? Juan Diego, how do you, I mean, so much of this opera rests on the chemistry between Mimi and Rodolfo.
Yeah.
How do you work on that in the rehearsal room?
I think it's something that has to be there. I never worked with Eileen before, and we just clicked in rehearsal. And this is important. It's the way, you know, two people click, and her eyes, my eyes, you know, the way she has this beautiful way of looking. I don't know if it's just for me, but she has these beautiful eyes, and you kind of get a little bit hypnotized, yeah? So it's a nice chemistry already from her eyes to me, you know. I don't know how to explain it. So it's not always happening. So I think, I hope this is the same for you.
Yeah.
I'm speaking about me.
Yeah.
And it was very easy to work together, and to do all these beautiful scenes, and to take care of her, because it's they are very tender moments. And yeah, it's not about so much doing a lot of stuff. It's about connecting and having these looks and understanding each other. So I think the connection is totally there. What do you think?
I agree with you, but I'm going to bring in also André. One of my favorite moments of Bohème is the top of Act 4, the duet between Marcello and Rodolfo, as they're both missing their muses, Mimi and Musetta. And I think that this friendship between these two gentlemen, you know, I think that in opera we always look for great duets, and I think, I'm not alone, but I think super fans just love this duet, and you have to hear it. It's just, that's your mate, as you guys say, your mate, your best mate, and you both.
Yeah, I have
Puccini
to say that in this production, I find everybody. Yeah, I mean it's normal. I mean everybody is a professional, and everybody is a good singer, of course, if they are singing here at the Royal Opera. Yeah. But the group is great. I mean, everybody is so nice, so sympathetic, and that makes everything easier. And I'm not just saying it, it's like that, it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
But I love the idea that the two men have this kind of other romance, that there's a kind of, I guess we'd call it a bromance these days. There's a big bromance in there as well. I need to go to André as well, because André, you've sung Schönau as well, I believe. Is that true?
Yeah, we sang in
Met
with
we did,
with Eileen.
So can you tell us
Years
how
ago? 2 or 3 years
Yeah, it feels like 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
how different is Schönau to Marcello for you?
Different roles, different music, feeling the same. Both are young guys, you know. But yeah, I like more Marcello.
Well, that's really convenient, not least because this is your Royal Opera House debut, isn't it? Is that correct? This is your first time
it's my
singing
debut
here.
Yeah.
Congratulations. How
Thank
are you
you.
feeling about this?
You know, from the very beginning, I'm from Moldova, small country, okay? And I have a dream to sing the best theater in the world. met Covent Garden, Bolshoi, Scala. And step by step, you know, my dream came true.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
You just need
Now-
to sing in Peru, and that's
Yeah, in Peru. And you sing in Moldova.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now it's my turn.
You need to extend your list. Clearly, we need some more places to tick off now.
I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, it's wonderful to have you here. Juan Diego, Eileen, do you remember your debuts? You have, of course, both sung here many times. So do you remember your debuts? Do you have advice for André?
Oh, advice. I think I'm learning so much from André. Your training was so intense from the school, of the culture you come from, your values, and he brings that person himself to his art form. So the way we greet each other in the morning, the way he sings his lines, brings his music, is generous in working out the scenes. So we have, obviously dramatic beats we have to get through and certain choreography, and it takes a great deal of patience and kindness, and also you can't hold back. You try, but I think we all have to, really invest ourselves, and he does that on and off stage. It's a beautiful soul. So I don't think he needs my advice. I think it's just a joy. It's a joy, and I think that's one of the. I think
You can go to eat.
young artists who are fearful, which I know I sure had a lot of nerves. I had a lot of
What was your role when you
ways
debuted?
to hide. My role debut here was Violetta in La Traviata. And I was so excited, but I think that it's a terrifying feeling to handle music alone on the stage with the chorus just leaves, And so in bohème, I have my friends at all times, and I don't think Mimi is ever alone, really, except backstage before she knocks on the door is probably the only time she's alone. And
For 1 minute.
I love that feeling. I love that, yeah.
Nobody
Juan Diego,
What was the question?
what did you make your role debut as here? Do you remember?
A long time ago.
You're not so old, die.
25 years ago.
And how was it? How did it feel? Do you remember?
The theater was closed. So it was Elizabeth, yeah. So it was Elizabeth of Donizetti, and that was my debut. I had to learn the part in 5 days.
Okay.
So the opera sent me a fax, and I had to study on the airplane.
Oh my
And I
God.
had this fax. It was huge, but you remember the faxes? They got like in rolls because the paper was so thin. So it was like I had to study like that on the plane. And that was my debut. In 5 days, I had to learn this part.
Wow.
And then after that, I believe it was Rossini's Otello.
Wow.
Yes. And that was great. It was a great production.
Okay. And would you like to, you could either offer André some advice or you could give him another ego boost, I think, is the other thing at this point.
Let's see.
Die.
No, I mean, he's a professional. He's great. He's a great singer. I think he doesn't need any help from anybody.
I'm a young guy. Die.
There you go, André. You came for the Insights evening and you got cheerleading. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a thing.
I'm free.
Okay, Eileen, Mimi is really your signature role, I think it's fair to say, isn't it? Has your relationship with the character changed as you've sung her in different places, in different productions over years?
I think the hardest thing is taking your time. I think that the score, I always carry the score
Goes with
me
your
just in
dress,
case. Yeah, it goes.
same color.
I love it. I didn't plan it. But I
was
think
fun.
that the hardest thing is to be patient at the beginning of anything for me, really. So to trust to go slow and to lean and trust on just the thought. I think that we've been working tirelessly with Danielle Urbas, our wonderful stage director, and she's like, we see what you mean. Just think it and we'll know. And so it's just paring it down, and trusting myself, which I think is probably my life's work now. Trust myself. I would say that that's how it's changing and will change, which
I
hopefully
wonder-
we'll read.
you make it look so easy to sing this role.
Oh, good.
Presumably, under the surface, there are challenges. Would you mind letting us in on some of the secrets?
So here's the thing. You think soprano, you think you're going to go, you know, we have voices that carry beautifully, basically, once you go over the staff. Well, Mimi is, she's doubled by the French horns, the like the brass, everything, all the big moments. You think, here it is, I'm going to shine. And then you have the whole orchestra with you. And you think, you know,
Yeah.
who's going to, but it does carry, but it's quite low. And I think that, like, I think it's tough to be a low-centered voice, especially being timid, as she can be portrayed. And I think she's actually very brave, but the music is written so slow that that's a good reason to take it slower, to just prolong the way she's going to open up about herself, which it's just very low. So that's the inside scoop. We're all sopranos, you know, trying to get comfy in the seat and trying to support and sing connected and make it feel like you're just speaking. And that's all that's happening. And all the music it's just happening. But staying with the spoken quality of the lines like a great Shakespearean actor.
I'm going to stick with that idea of spoken quality because, Juan Diego, I mean, you're known as a bel canto specialist, basically, the
Yes.
Donizetti, Rossini, Bellini, Verdi, but of course you've sung lots of other repertory too, including here at Covent Garden. Tell us about how Rodolfo compares to those earlier roles in vocal terms for you.
Not so much. It compares more to the repertoire I've been singing already from, I think, 2011, 2010. So Werther, Romeo, Hoffman. So it's more that kind of singer.
That kind of late 19th century French.
More central. And a lot of orchestra. Same thing.
Well, I was going to say, are there challenges for you as well? Again,
it's
it
another
sounds
way
easy.
of singing, but always keeping the quality of the voice. So for me, it's very important. Never pushing. So yes, I've been. I think I've been lucky because I still sing Rossini. I just sang Le Comptoir, which is very one of the most difficult roles in Rossini, very high, and I can still play these roles at the same time. So for me, it's like, wow, I can do this, and I can have a taste of this wonderful different repertoires, which is really enriching. And yeah, to be able to sing with somebody like Eileen, that only, you don't sing Rossini.
No, I wish I could sing Rossini.
I get to sing with these guys and other crowds, of singers, and it's wonderful because it's fantastic.
And I mean, in this opera, you get to sing some of the most famous operatic music there is.
Yes.
All right, we'll leave that hanging. André, I mean, we've already said how this is your second role in this opera.
Yeah.
I wonder whether I can push you. Is there another role? I mean, okay, so you've run out of options for your voice type at this point, I guess. But if you could sing anything in this opera for one night, is there another role that you would take? And just throw caution to the wind.
We just speak about this before. Maybe Parpignol? Sorry. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Okay. It's more serious. I don't know. I like Marcello.
All right. You want to stick rather than twist.
It's all about me, the power, the feeling, the energy. And of course, if you speak about vocal moments, beautiful moments, it's about Mimi and Rodolfo. Because the aria of Rodolfo is very famous.
But our duet is fantastic.
Yeah, and also our duet.
Our duet is really fantastic.
Yeah, but I prefer to be Marcello.
All right. Well, you can't say better than that, can you? You're the man singing the right role. Thank you so much for joining me. I realize you've had a long day of rehearsals. Thank you. Very best for opening night.
Thank
10
you.
days' time. And we'll be looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
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 It's so nice to speak to you.
Thank you. Well, I have to admit, as a professional opera historian, I absolutely detest being asked what my favourite opera is. It's one of those unanswerable questions. But La Bohème is always left as one of the handful I'm left with that I can't choose between at the end. And that's largely down to Puccini's music that just gets into my brain and stays there for days afterwards. So, to tell us more about what makes Puccini's music have that extraordinary magical quality, please welcome our conductor, Kevin John Edusei. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Sorry for giving you a new name there. Now, thank you for joining us. I'd love to start. Tell us a bit about your relationship with this opera. When did you first come across La Bohème?
I think the first time that I came across the piece was when I was 12 or 13 years old, and my parents took me to the local theater of my hometown Bielefeld in Germany to a performance that was considered quite progressive. There was an American director, John Edusei, at the helm of this opera house, and I can't really remember the staging, but I remember the booing that there was. So it was a wonderful, great theater evening with Bohème.
Fantastic. And when did you actually get to know the music?
That came later. I got interested when I was around 15 and 16, and I went to the public library and came back with piano scores and orchestral scores, and was obsessed with opera and symphonic music.
And did you have a chance to conduct it when you were young, when you were studying?
We actually had in Berlin, where I studied at the University of the Arts, we also had a master class on Bohème. But my first experience really conducting the piece was probably a bit more than 15 years ago, when I auditioned for a first Kapellmeister position. A first Kapellmeister is a sort of deputy music director, and it is considered one of the duties of a Kapellmeister to be able to jump into a performance of a running production that another conductor has rehearsed and brought to performance. So that audition included conducting La Bohème without any rehearsal. And everything on that evening went wrong. So there was, Mimi was ill. So another Mimi came in that I had never seen before. I didn't know the orchestra. I didn't know anyone of the cast. There was, I think, half an hour of rehearsal time with the piano and a completely fed up cast because they were auditioning all those different conductors, and I was like number 17 maybe, and so they had to come in every time when a new conductor would take over this piece. So I didn't get the job, but it was a wonderful experience.
It didn't put you off this opera? I mean, that sounds terrifying.
No,
to
it
me
did
personally.
not. It absolutely did not. It was more, it was fantastic learning experience to really see how difficult it is to conduct this piece.
Well, I've always wondered about that, because one of the things I really love about this is the way that the score opens. It just plunges us straight into
Yes.
this world. There's no overture, there's no hanging around and coughing
No.
and clearing his throat.
No.
He just takes us into that world.
We're
And
drawn directly into the scene.
Yeah.
There's no prelude, there's no time actually. As soon as the curtain goes up, we're drawn into the scene. And that was, of course, Puccini's goal to reach a point where realism really takes over. But
that comes
before
with
we
its challenges, I guess.
it is absolutely challenging, but maybe before we talk about this, we let our wonderful orchestra tonight play the beginning. André, would you please?
Yeah, we are welcoming tonight as an orchestra, as you can see, André Callegaro at the piano, one of our repetiteurs here. Yeah, let's give him a round of applause.
Questo Marosso mia molescias. Yeah, well, this
So we hear the
is
voices
perfect.
so soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, bravo.
Tell us about what's going on there. Tell us what your job is in that opening.
My job in that opening is actually to organize and to make it possible for the orchestra to play together. And when in conversation with colleagues, other conductors, and you say, well, what's your next piece, or what are you about to conduct? And you mention, well, my next piece is La Bohème. It's for sure someone will reply and say, oh, that opening. Because for us conductors, it's absolutely scaring to open this piece. Because first of all, it starts with a semiquaver rest. Maybe you could play the first bar again, this motive. So you don't hear a one, but it goes like ba-dum-bum-ba. And this is the perfect setting, of course, for a sort of horror vacui, because we give a strict downbeat, and then we have to sort of pray that something happens, because we, as conductors, we wave around, but we don't produce any sound. So this is really terrifying for us. But many don't know about this opening music, which is so brilliant, that Puccini actually stole this music, and he stole it from himself, because it is contained in the Capriccio Sinfonico that he had written in the year 1883. That was the last piece that he, as a student at the Milan Conservatory, composed. And it's a wonderful work that shows many of the qualities of the later Puccini already. And I think it would be nice to hear it. So it
we
opens.
can hear this. It's a very short extract we've got for you, but we can.
Yes, it opens up with a very romantic prelude, and then you'll discover some music that you already know.
It's remarkable
Isn't that
to think
wonderful?
of that as a
Yes.
graduation piece, isn't
Yes.
it? I mean, the guy was in his early 20s. Such fine skill at orchestration, so many orchestral colours.
Yes.
Presumably that becomes a real challenge for you to manage throughout the whole opera, that there's such a fine balance.
There's a fine balance. Also, our wonderful singers mentioned that just before. Of course, it's also a matter of finding a balance so that the singers always can easily be on top of the orchestra. But at the same time, as a conductor, you, of course, also want to bring out those special qualities in the instrumentation and the handling of the orchestra. So you have to really find the sweet spot where there's just enough room for the singers to really be on top of everything, and the orchestra supporting the singers.
I wonder whether you could tell us very briefly about how Puccini actually makes those characters sound different. We heard a bit about who these characters are, but I wonder, how does he distinguish between them musically? Or does he? Is it all just beautiful?
It is all just beautiful. He, of course, distinguishes, first of all, by the choice of the Fach and how he treats the tessitura.
So the Fach being the type of voice.
The type of voice that you're looking for. Maybe a younger singer, as André pointed out, starts as a chonard and has his first real experience with the piece and later becomes a Marcello. And then also the choice for whether Musetta is a very light soprano or has also lyrical qualities. So there's all those choices in the casting that, of course, Puccini also thought about before, and he would really write very specifically for certain types then.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of always struck, though, by how different Mimi and Musetta are musically in this piece. We know Musetta just seems to have so much more confidence.
Yes, yeah.
But anyway, I know you've got some other kind of favourite bits in your pocket of this score.
I do.
So
I have.
What's next?
I have a whole list of things that I would want to demonstrate. Probably we don't have the time for this, but in the first act, and I think Juan Diego mentioned this, for me, one of the most moving moments is really after the aria of Rodolfo, when the two, Mimi and Rodolfo, actually get together and the duet O Suave Fanciulla starts. And it is as if really this love relationship is elevated to something that is much more transcendental. And you can hear this in the writing, you can even hear it, and this is the mastery of Puccini, you can even hear it when the piano plays it. So, André, if we just could play just a couple of bars of this. Thank you very much. So you hear that there is a quality in the music that is always vibrant. There's a lot of things going on, but at a very soft volume. So you can hear really the air molecules being in motion around the two main characters, and that's, I think, just wonderful.
It's an amazing effect, isn't it? I've heard colleagues of mine describe it as acoustic wallpaper that Puccini creates, and wallpaper is not used as an insult there, to be clear, that he's kind of bringing these emotions to life as a kind of space. Yeah. It's really remarkable. Yeah. Thank you. All right,
and yet the score is also very modern in its way of writing. And one example, for example, is in the second act, when at the end of Musetta's great aria, Quando men vo, suddenly there comes the banda music and two different time signatures, one being the waltz, which is in a 3/4 bar, and then the march of the banda, who appear on stage really live, played live, in 2/4 bar are layered. On top of each other.
So to be clear, Act 2 takes us out into the city, doesn't it? It's full of life.
It's full of life.
After the attic of the first act.
Yes.
And so we hear that layering. Please take it away.
So we hear a couple of bars of that waltz of Musetta that you probably recognize, and then the blend into the banda music, please. Yes, bravo. For me, that is for me that is a moment that is almost like a film technique that we see later in the films of in the early 30s,
montage
40s. It's a montage. It's a sort of crossfade. So the thinking, the aesthetics behind this are already very 20th century and modern.
It's so bold to think he was writing this in the middle of the 1890s. And that's by tonality, if you want the technical term for it. It's two things going on that don't match musically at all. And that wouldn't become at all normal in music for decades to come. He was so forward-thinking. All right, so we've got the modern Puccini here. I think we've got time for one more favourite bit, if you've got one up your sleeve.
Let's see. Well, the death of Mimi in Act 4 is a wonderful and touching moment, of course. her line is just on one note, and she almost speaks the last words. It's so soft. At the same time, we can hear the music of the first act aria, Che gelida manina, in the motives, and then there's a long rest, a fermata lunga, as Puccini writes in the score, and then a sudden chord change, and that chord change goes to the tonality of B minor. This is in music history very often considered to be also the death tonality. So, and we hear this change and the confirmation that she just has passed away only in the music, because even we look closely at the set, we can't really tell, but we hear it with our own eyes, and that's, I think, a brilliant moment.
It's shocking even in this context, isn't it? It's sorry about the spoiler for anyone who didn't know this ended badly. I'm afraid it's a very sad opera. But yeah, there's something so modern about, so true to life, about the idea that Mimi, she's just gone. There's no spotlight on her. There's not a big aria that she sings as she's dying, and it all goes on longer than could ever be real. It's a type of operatic realism that is new and very moving as a result, I think.
Yes.
Okay, I think it's time to hear some singing as well. Let's welcome tenor David Junghoon Kim to sing Che gelida manina that we just heard echoed there. Let's hear it in its full-blooded original version. Just before we welcome him, I wonder, could you set this up for us? What are we about to hear?
Mimi and Rodolfo have just met, their neighbors. Rodolfo lives in the garret of a building, and Mimi knocks on his door. They instantly fall in love with each other, and then Rodolfo sort of presents himself or introduces himself to Mimi with this aria. There's one spot where he sings "Chi son? Sono un poeta, che cosa faccio? Scrivo," where he really answers all the questions you would expect Mimi to ask him. So it's
who am I? I am a poet.
I am a poet. What do? I write. And how do I live? Well, I just live, and that's a portrait of this character.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's welcome then to sing this David Junghoon Kim.
Per fortuna una notte di luna, e qui la luna l'abbiamo vicina. Aspetta son? Chi son? Sono un poeta. Che cosa faccio? Scrivo e come vivo, vivo. In povertà mia lieta, sciallo da gran signore, rime digni d'amore, per sogni e per chimere e per castelli in aria. L'anima milionaria, talarda il mio forziere,
Many thanks to David, Junghoon Kim, and André Callegaro, being an entire orchestra there on the piano. It's so simple, isn't it, Kevin? And yet it's just,
It's
it's
not
irresistible.
simple at all.
Logically, it's so simple.
I always have the feeling that on his high C, he really reveals himself to her, and that's such a wonderful moment every time I hear this aria.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be hearing this for days now, all over again. Before I let you go as well, I wonder whether you could tell us a little bit more about the fact that you've worked as a music director in an opera house, and you also are chief conductor of a symphony orchestra. So how different is it to conduct opera?
It's quite different. First of all, the time aspect of how long a production is and how long it takes before you reach a certain artistic result is so different. And what I like so much about working in the music theater is also that you work in a team. It's always a team effort. You always work with a director, a set designer. You work with singers, the orchestra, the chorus. And every single part of that wonderful puzzle is equally important, I find. And at a certain time also as a conductor, you have to sort of surrender to this very complex situation that an opera production is. And if you can let loose sometimes and see yourself not as the epicenter of this production, but I think you're also just one puzzle piece, then you can really start to enjoy that magic happens sometimes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming to talk. I know you're in the middle of your rehearsal period. Very best of luck
Thank you.
with
It's a pleasure.
what remains of the rehearsals, and enjoy. Well, as I said to the singers already, we'll be looking forward to opening
Thank you so
night.
much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Well, finally tonight, we're going to, of course, find out more about this production itself, which will be retaking the main stage here at the Royal Opera House from the 14th of October. Who better to reveal all the inside gossip or secrets, or just to tell us what it's like to revive a production at all, than revival director Danielle Urbas. Please welcome her now. Hello, Danielle. Thank you so much again for making time. You've all been in rehearsals all day,
Yes,
I know,
yeah.
haven't you? So you've got quite a long history with this production, actually, haven't you? Because you worked on it originally in 2017 as movement director.
As a
I
movement,
think.
as assistant
Yeah.
to the original movement director, Saya Fay. And ever since, I was in every revival, including twice in Madrid and once in Chicago.
Do you actually dream about it at night?
I do when we start rehearsals. It's terrible. Sometimes I have just Papignon in my head at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Papignon is memorable,
Is it? Yes,
short, doesn't sing much, but does stick in the mind. Tell us a bit about, firstly, what does a movement director do, or indeed an assistant movement director? How do you fit into the world of an opera production?
So a movement director would do a lot of things. This is a huge show at times. So Act 2 would have almost 100 people on stage. So you have the chorus, which are about 60 people. We have about 12 actors, we then have 19 children, and we have the cast. So, and everybody goes on stage at the same time. So it is a lot to do. Now, what normally happens is that the movement director will help with the chorus, with the actors, dancers, children, and will help with very specific things to do with things that are more movement oriented. Saying that, Richard Jones' productions are incredibly movement oriented and almost and very specific to cues and beats in the music, and I'm sure the cast could tell you how specific it is. How detailed it is, and it helps to have someone else who can look at it not just in terms of thoughts or objectives or the character, but also in terms of how you faint or how you would have little tiny moments that the movement could really help convey the thoughts or the intentions.
I think that's the thing. As audience members, it's sometimes easy to forget that, you know, the singers, of course, they need to be on the right beat. As Eileen was saying, you know, we mustn't be late and we mustn't be early.
Yeah.
But actually, it's about fitting it all into this world of movements as well. And
Yeah, and how you,
so
how you do it organically, because it's they juggle so many balls. So it's not only the singing and the movement, but it's also the intentions, and it's also you know, their objectives and how they do it. And there's a lot to think about. And it feels in rehearsals. The rehearsal, I do sometimes feel, you know, revivals are very condensed. So when you create a show, you might have a very luxurious 4 or 5 weeks to create it and, you know, to go over it and refine it. When you come to do a revival, it moves very quickly. And I feel it sometimes in rehearsal. I push them, they push, and I'm sure that brings them together as well. When there is someone at the other end of the room just go, no, do it again. No, this is not good. No, you have to go to the other shoulder. No, you know, that would bring a group together when they could just go like, Jesus.
They've really gelled, but maybe you're providing that.
Yeah, I think the hard work makes them gel because you really do push them. The production is finished and they have to fit into something that wasn't necessarily made to measure, you know.
So tell us a bit about, because again, these terms can be quite mysterious from the outside, I think. I mean, you're now working as the revival director, so what does that actually mean your job is at the moment?
Predominantly, it's working harder. It means basically working on layers, is giving them the geography and the blocking basically, and then tweaking it and refining it, and then starting to talk about objectives and how you do it. And like Eileen was saying, to trust yourself and not... so this production, this I was going to say play, but this opera is actually written, it's very well written. If you actually remove the music, it would still work as a play. It's so well written. And they have, it gives so much that you don't need to push, you don't need to act. You can just trust the words, trust the music, and trust what it is that you're trying to do to the other performer with you. And it's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure to give, and they're so good. They're so good. It's a pleasure to sometimes give direction and see how they deal with it. It's a delight to say, no, you don't know the end just yet. Don't overreact. Don't be dramatic about it. You don't know how jealous Rodolfo is yet, and to see how quickly. You know, it's a pleasure to see them shaping their thoughts.
So when you say the production is finished, how is it kind of recorded? What are you working from? Or is it all in your memory from?
No, so we have a score, and in the score everything is recorded. So we know that Rodolfo moves a chair here, and we know what he's thinking, because that's what the original director might have said during the rehearsals. And on the original production, I think we had 3 assistants. So we would have 3 scores documented. And that's what you work from.
Okay.
Then later on you have videos and recordings, but when you know the production, you know what are the mistakes on the video. So that's the sort of problems. Sometimes when someone gets a video and they will say, well, that's how it is in the video, you then need to explain that, well, he didn't do it quite right on the video.
So this is actually a chance, effectively, to tweak things back to how they were supposed to be.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. So, the truth is that it's not meant to happen. You're meant to sort of do it exactly how it is. But I've worked with Richard on other revivals, and I've learned that what is important to him and what is important for him is the emotional truth so you learn to, I know from other productions that in other productions, yes, it was done like that, even though in the original production it might have been like so. So there's a little bit of, but not too much.
So presumably there needs to be a little space for these individual singers, these new cast members, to come in and bring something of themselves? Or do they need to leave that at the door of the rehearsal room?
There is very little space. There is space, you have to. I mean, it's different people, so they will do it differently. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily feel right or comfortable, but that's your role as revival director, is to help them feel comfortable and to say, well, let's try, see how it feels. And then maybe you do find little ways to tweak it to their sort of measure. But ultimately, they do the original production.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've talked about it enough without actually seeing it. I think we've got some images to show, so we can actually look at what this production looks like for anyone who hasn't seen it before. Tell us a bit about this. This looks to me like the opening of Act 3, I think.
Yeah.
Tell us about what we're seeing here.
So, just a word about the set generally. It's very unusual. This opera, you have the attic of Act 1 and Act 4, and that's where the 4 lives, Marcello, Rodolfo, Schaunard, and Collina. That's where they live. That's where Mimi comes in the end to, we know the end, to die.
It's all right, it's already been spoiled.
Oh, it's all right, okay, so spoiler alert. And then we have Act 2 and Act 3. We don't have anything in the background. So normally when you go to the opera, you'd have even blacks to just basically cover the back of the theater, which might have pipes and might have things hanging or electricity or whatever you'd find. And here you don't have it. It's all open. You probably won't be able to see much because it's very dark, but you do really get to feel how big the stage of the Royal Opera is. And the scene changes are done with very beautifully designed lighting, and you see it all. You see our crew changes the set, and it's quite remarkable to see it. It's quite hypnotizing. You just sort of sit, and the stage is open, and you see those pieces of set, very beautifully lit, just move in front of you. And weirdly, you'd think that it would sort of break the magic of theatre, but it actually makes it more magical.
I was going to say, the start of this act, I won't give the game away. You've got to have something left to look forward to, haven't you? But the start of this act, the way that's done, it takes my breath away every time. It's one of the most magical things I've ever seen in this theatre. It is stunningly beautiful. And this white we're seeing, that's snow, isn't it?
Yes, and it snows throughout most of the opera. It's an incredible amount of paper.
Does it get recycled? Does it get swept back up? And is it a cycle? Or
One would hope so, otherwise we're talking about the Amazon.
Well, of course.
Yeah, no, I think it does, yeah.
Okay, we won't dwell on that.
No, it does. It does get recycled.
So tell us about this setting.
So this is Act 3. It's probably, in terms of acts, it's got, probably that's the only piece of set on stage. So there's nothing else. You see Act 2 is parked on either side, but you see the back of it, which is very beautiful.
I think we've got Act 2, if we're able to zoom straight forwards to that, perhaps, so that's our
Act 1.
attic.
This Act 2.
Here's Act 2.
So
Thank
these
you.
things move, and the back of them is black, and so they move to stage left, and you just sort of see a little bit of light. It's very, very beautiful. And then the only thing that you would see was the hut, the inn, and it's a wide open space, and it's really remarkable because it's just a black empty stage with snow coming down. It's
in fact,
really,
we can see the end of Act 2 as well, I think, is the next slide. There we go. That's
the end of Act 3.
Oh, sorry, end of Act 3.
Yeah.
Apologies. It's such a sense that we're on the edge of Paris in this act, and we really get that sense of openness here, I think.
It's really very beautiful. I think it's a bit, but the singers will let us know, but I think it's a bit of a challenge to sing because it is an open
It's a huge
stage.
space.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to the garret if we can, just to have a quick look at this set that we see at the opening. Thank you. So this is where our lads live.
Yes.
Our behemoths.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of movement around this space, isn't there, in this production?
There is a lot. There's a lot of blood drawn in the rehearsal room, I have to say. There's a lot of, you need to get used to it.
Tell us, how does it actually work in a rehearsal room? Again, for those of us who don't spend our times in rehearsal rooms, how do you balance the fact that you need to be getting the cast as actors, essentially, to be getting them used to this space, while, say, Kevin is also working on working on the music with them? How does that balance out?
Well, it was lovely working with Kevin because he seemed to. I felt that there's a lot of space to sort of teach it or hand it, and he almost felt like he was sitting back waiting to see what is going on before sort of then completing it. You just have to take it slow. You just have to sort of walk and talk and then ask whether they would like to walk it again. Do we want the music? Are we ready for the music? It's just layering and layering and layering, unfortunately, quite quickly. So they are pushed, and sometimes I do feel at the end of the day that it's just, I can see it's sort of the brain is exploding with information.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we go back one last time? Can we go back to the Act 2 set, I wonder? Because this is, again, for those who haven't seen this, it's so beautiful, these arcades, these sort of Parisian arcades. There's a lot of stuff on this big stage.
Yeah, and just to say, Act 2 starts, again, a completely empty stage, and the chorus are all entering the stage, and this comes once the music already starts. So you see those pieces of set sort of take place on stage, and then you see them all come out. And the other.
It's actually like
comes-
constructing it
Yeah.
in front of our eyes.
Yeah, it's really set-wise. It's really lovely. It's really a lovely piece.
Can you tell us anything about the costumes? I think the original story for this opera was actually set in the 1840s and 50s, but these are kind of, it's a fin de siècle setting, basically, I think, isn't it?
It is, it is. I think it's almost as, places though, it's almost modern. I was thinking the boys' costumes is, if you would see them somewhere in Hackney or Deptford, you would think that they're students, they are students.
Come back in, they're just hipsters.
They are. I mean, it's not necessarily period, what they're wearing, but it is. Yeah, but I think that helps to make it more timeless.
I was going to say, do you think that's, I mean, of course you can't speak for Richard's ideas here exactly, but do you think that's part of the idea that this is a Paris that was always a fantasy, that it's not that it's a historical moment exactly, it's that it's a kind of world.
I don't think it's a historical moment, but I also think it's not a fantasy. I think that's what young people are like. You know, that's what young people, that's what they behave like. Act 1, it's all about having fun, you know. It's all about banter. It's all about going out and Christmas Eve, got some money, let's go to the, you know, let's go drink. You know, that's what you do when you're young.
Yeah.
And then you know, we have the relationship, and didn't we all have very raucous, passionate relationship when we were young until, you know, and it's I think it's one of the things that make this piece timeless.
Yeah.
Because we can put it in a, you know, period production, but really, if you think about it, it's exactly what young people do today. Apart from die from TB, obviously.
Yeah, mercifully that's less
Doesn't
common
happen.
today.
Yes.
So you actually trained originally as an actor, I think, didn't
Yeah.
you? Does that change the way you approach opera, do you think? I mean, opera used to have a terrible reputation as a kind of park and bark art form where singers would come on and then, you know, sing their piece and then be wheeled off again.
I think one has to say they're not Richard's productions. They've never been. They're very, very theatrical. It helps. Yeah, it helps in a way that the language is more to do with objectives and what is it that you want, and relating to the text a lot, and getting them to trust that the audience will get the story even if they don't, you know, push the emotion. That just think it and want it and act to get it, and the audience will get it. You know, they will. That's. It helps sometimes in terms that I would think like an actor. If there's a problem, I would think, well, how would I do it? You know, what would I do? What would I think? Sometimes it helps, you know. I mean, sometimes it's just talking to them through what works for them. So, yeah.
Okay, dare I ask you what you're going to be doing for the next 10 days before opening night? What happens now?
Oh,
you're obviously halfway through the rehearsal period.
Cast B and Cast C. we don't
How does
stop.
that work? So just to clarify, we have multiple casts for this production, so how on earth does that work?
So the minute that the stage rehearsal started for Cast A, for this wonderful cast, we started on Cast C. Cast B, sorry. Today we've rehearsed the banda, because as Kevin was saying, the banda goes on stage and they're going with our actors. So we have 6, 12, I think we have 17 as a banda. So it requires a little bit of rehearsals of how they interact. And it was wonderful. It was really, really wonderful, really fun. Yeah, it's just going to be Cast B. And when Cast B are on stage, we're starting Cast C. It's very hard work. It's very hard work for the cast. They have to do a lot, to get a lot in no time. Yeah.
See, we sit there in the auditorium thinking how wonderful it all is, and we're watching the production line come through in front of us, and yet it feels so special every night.
Yeah, it does. But it's not, you know, we can talk here and, you know, talk and be very loose and glamorous, but the truth is that it's a very, very hard work to get the production on. And the cast do, you know, hats off to them. It's a lot to juggle in a short space of time. They have a lot to think about.
And for you as well. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
in the
you.
midst of this extremely hectic schedule.
Thank you very much.
Very best of luck
Thank
for
you.
opening night. I'm actually going to get you to stay there.
Okay.
Yeah, give her a round of applause. Well, I'm afraid that is actually all we've got time for tonight. But of course, the curtain will be going up on La Bohème here at the Royal Opera House's main stage on the 14th of October. Do get your tickets if you haven't already got them. Until then, many thanks to Danielle and to all my guests this evening. Thank you to everyone who has joined us here in the Claw studio at the Royal Opera House. And of course, thank you to all those of you watching from your own homes all across the world. Thank you for joining us for this Insight Evening, supported by Rolex, and good night.